Welcome to Silent Empire Stories. If you enjoy powerful stories of family betrayal, emotional justice, hidden fortunes, and unforgettable revenge, you're in the right place. Today's story is one you won't forget. Now, let's begin. The day my parents sold my grandfather's ranch, they looked happier than I'd ever seen them. My father stood at the front of the conference room with a smile that made my stomach tighten. My mother sat beside him, wearing the same pearl necklace Grandpa had given her 20 years earlier, a gift she used to claim proved she was his favorite child. Across the polished oak table sat my younger sister, Emily, barely able to hide her excitement. In front of each of us was a thick folder. Mine felt strangely light. Theirs looked full. That should have been my first warning. The office overlooked miles of rolling Texas farmland. Ironically, I could see the edge of Grandpa Henry's ranch through the window. The golden fields glowed under the afternoon sun, looking exactly as they had when I was a child chasing horses across the pasture with Grandpa laughing behind me. Back then, he always told me one thing. Land remembers the people who respect it. I never understood what he meant. Not until that afternoon. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming." Before he could continue, my father interrupted him. "I'll handle this." The lawyer hesitated, then quietly leaned back in his chair. That tiny moment stayed with me. It was almost as if he didn't agree with what was happening. My father clasped his hands together. "As everyone knows, your grandfather passed away 6 weeks ago." His voice carried no sadness, only business. "The ranch has officially been sold." Emily smiled. Mom reached over and squeezed her hand. I looked around the room. Nobody looked at me. Not one person. Dad continued. "The property sold for $12 million. $12 million. Hearing the number out loud felt unreal. That ranch wasn't just land. It was 4 generations of family history. Every fence had been repaired by Grandpa. Every stable carried memories. Every oak tree had a story. I swallowed hard. Dad opened another folder. "After discussing everything carefully, your mother and I decided Emily deserves the future Grandpa wanted." Emily lowered her eyes, pretending to be humble. She had perfected that expression years ago. The innocent smile, the grateful daughter, the golden child. Dad slid a document toward her. "You'll receive the proceeds from the ranch, the investment accounts, and the vacation cabin." Emily whispered, "I don't know what to say." Mom smiled proudly. "You deserve every penny." I waited. Surely there had to be another folder, another envelope, another explanation. Instead, Dad turned toward me with the same expression he used whenever I disappointed him. "As for you," he paused long enough to make everyone uncomfortable. "You've always chosen your own path." I frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," Mom answered before he could, "you left the family business years ago. I became an architect. You abandoned us. I built my own career." Dad sighed dramatically. "And we're proud of that." Whenever my father started a sentence with, "We're proud of you," something painful always followed. "Which is why we believe you don't need financial help." I stared at him. "So," he nodded, "you won't receive anything." The room fell silent. Even the air conditioning seemed louder. I looked toward the lawyer. He avoided my eyes. Then I looked at Emily. She wouldn't meet my gaze either. Finally, I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because I honestly believed this had to be some kind of joke. $12 million, I said quietly. "And Grandpa left me nothing?" Dad folded his arms. "Exactly." I looked toward the lawyer again. "Is that what Grandpa's will actually says?" The lawyer opened his mouth. Before he could answer, Dad spoke over him. "The estate has already been settled." Something about that sentence felt rehearsed, too rehearsed. The lawyer slowly closed his file. His expression had changed. He looked uneasy, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't. I noticed another man sitting silently near the end of the conference table. Gray suit, silver tie, leather briefcase. He hadn't spoken once since I arrived. I assumed he worked for the law office. Then he stood. He wasn't introduced. He didn't ask permission. He simply looked directly at my father. "I'm sorry," he said calmly. "I believe this meeting is ending much sooner than it should." The room froze. Dad frowned. "And you are?" The man placed a dark blue folder on the table. "My name is Daniel Brooks." He looked toward me. "I'm the senior regional manager for First Western National Bank." Nobody spoke. Dad forced a smile. "I'm not sure why a bank manager is here." Daniel rested one hand on the folder. "Because your father, Henry Walker," he paused, "left something in our custody 23 years ago." Mom's face lost all color. Emily looked confused. Dad leaned forward. "We've already handled the estate." Daniel nodded politely. "Most of it." Then he gently slid the sealed folder across the table. But not all of it. Every eye followed the envelope. It had Grandpa's handwriting across the front. In faded black ink, only 7 words were written. "Open only if they betray him." My heartbeat stopped. Dad reached for the envelope. Daniel calmly placed his hand on top of it. "I'm afraid," his voice remained perfectly steady, "this envelope was never addressed to you." He turned toward me. "It was addressed to your grandson." Then he smiled slightly. "And according to Mr. Henry Walker's legal instructions, you are the only person in this room allowed to open it." The room was so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner. No one moved. No one breathed. The sealed envelope rested in front of me like it weighed 100 pounds. My father's face had turned pale. My mother kept staring at Grandpa's handwriting, as if she'd seen a ghost. Emily looked back and forth between them. "What is this?" she whispered. Dad forced a nervous laugh. "It doesn't matter." The bank manager didn't even look at him. "It matters enough that Mr. Henry Walker paid our bank to protect it for 23 years. 23 years. I slowly reached for the envelope. The paper felt old, thick. The edges were slightly worn. Grandpa had sealed it with dark red wax, the same wax he used on Christmas letters when I was a kid. For a moment, I wasn't sitting inside a law office anymore. I was 10 years old again. Grandpa's ranch wasn't just land, it was home. Every summer, while Emily spent her vacation shopping with Mom or taking expensive dance classes, I spent mine repairing fences, feeding horses, and following Grandpa everywhere. People always asked why. The answer was simple. Grandpa never treated me like a child. He treated me like I mattered. At sunrise, he'd wake me with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "Come on, partner," he'd say. "The horses are already judging us." I'd laugh every single time. We'd ride across the ranch before breakfast, watching the sun climb over the hills. Those mornings became my favorite memories. Not because of the horses, because Grandpa listened. He asked about school, about my dreams, about the things that scared me. My own parents rarely did. One afternoon when I was 12, we repaired a broken fence near the northern pasture. Grandpa suddenly stopped working. He leaned against the fence post and looked across the fields. "You know why I love this ranch?" I shrugged. "Because it's beautiful?" He smiled. "No." "Because it's worth millions?" He laughed. "Definitely not." Then his expression changed. "Land doesn't lie." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked directly at me. "People do." He pointed toward the old oak tree standing alone in the middle of the pasture. "That tree has watched 4 generations of our family." He paused. "It has seen honest men become greedy. It has seen brothers become enemies. It has seen parents choose favorites." I looked down. Even at 12, I knew exactly what he meant. Grandpa noticed. "You think I don't see what happens inside your house?" I stayed silent. You think I don't notice who gets blamed every time something goes wrong? My throat tightened. Emily had broken Mom's crystal vase the week before. I was grounded for 2 weeks. Dad said I should have stopped her. Grandpa knew. He always knew. That Christmas was the first time I realized how different Emily and I really were. Dad bought her a brand new horse, a beautiful white Arabian. She rode it twice. After that, she lost interest. Grandpa quietly gave the horse to one of the ranch workers because he knew the animal deserved better. For me, Dad gave a toolbox. Not because I liked tools, because he thought I'd become a mechanic instead of going to college. He laughed while handing it to me. Maybe this is more your speed. Everyone laughed, except Grandpa. Later that night, he knocked on my bedroom door. Without saying a word, he handed me a small leather notebook. Inside the cover, he'd written one sentence. Never let someone else decide how much you're worth. I kept that notebook for 25 years. I still have it. When I turned 18, Grandpa offered to pay for my college. Before I could answer, Dad interrupted. He doesn't need college. Grandpa looked at him. He got accepted. Dad shrugged. He'll come work for me. I finally spoke. I want to study architecture. Dad's smile disappeared instantly. So you think you're too good for the family business? No. You just think you know better. Grandpa stood. For the first time in my life, I saw him angry. Real anger. My grandson has earned the right to choose his own future. Dad stared back. And I've earned the right to decide what happens in my own family. Grandpa answered quietly. No. You've earned nothing. The room went silent. That was the first argument they ever had because of me. It wouldn't be the last. College changed everything. I left Texas, moved to Chicago, worked nights, studied during the day, graduated with honors, built a career designing hospitals and schools. Meanwhile, Emily stayed close to home. Dad hired her at the family company. Within 3 years, she became vice president. Not because she earned it, because she was family. Every holiday felt the same. Emily talked about promotions. Mom praised her. Dad bragged about the business. When anyone asked about me, the conversation changed. Oh, Mom would sigh dramatically. He's still drawing buildings. As if I colored cartoons for a living. No one mentioned that my projects had won awards. No one cared. Except Grandpa. Every month. Without fail. He called me. Sometimes just to ask one question. Still building things that matter? I'd smile. Trying to. Good. Then he'd say something that confused me for years. Keep your name clean. I'd laugh. I don't even speed. I'm not talking about traffic. Then he'd change the subject. At the time, I thought he was just getting older. Now, sitting inside that conference room, looking at the sealed envelope in front of me, I realized something. Grandpa wasn't warning me about life. He was preparing me for this day. Back in the present, Daniel Brooks adjusted his glasses. Mr. Walker, he looked directly at me. Before you open that envelope, there is something you should know. My father immediately stood. This is ridiculous. The estate is closed. Daniel calmly reached into his briefcase. No. He placed another document on the table. The estate isn't even close to being finished. The lawyer across the room slowly closed his eyes, as if he'd been dreading those exact words. Then Daniel added the sentence that made my mother's hands start shaking. Daniel Brooks' words hung in the room like thunder after a lightning strike. Because the ranch was never legally authorized to be sold. No one spoke. My father slowly pushed back his chair. That's impossible. Daniel remained calm. It isn't. Dad looked toward the estate lawyer. Richard, tell him he's wrong. Richard adjusted his glasses but didn't answer immediately. That silence told me more than any words could. Finally, he spoke. Daniel, this isn't the time. Daniel met his eyes. No. It was 23 years ago. The room fell silent again. I looked at Daniel. What are you talking about? He opened another folder. Mr. Henry Walker visited our bank on September 14th, 23 years ago. He placed a photocopy of an old visitor log on the table. Grandpa's signature was there. Clear, strong, undeniable. He rented a private safety deposit box. He also created a legally witnessed instruction package. Dad scoffed. So what? Daniel didn't react. He specifically instructed us to release certain documents only if 3 conditions were met. I leaned forward. What conditions? Daniel looked directly at me. First, if the ranch was sold. He raised one finger. Second, if you received no inheritance. A second finger. And third, if your parents claimed the estate had already been settled. The third finger. Every condition had happened. Exactly. My father suddenly slammed his hand on the table. This is absurd. Daniel calmly replied. It is precise. My mother finally found her voice. Henry never told us any of this. Daniel looked at her. He wasn't supposed to. She swallowed. You mean? Yes. He kept it secret. Emily stared at Dad. You knew about this? Dad avoided her eyes. No. For the first time that afternoon, I wasn't sure I believed anything he said. Daniel turned to me again. Mr. Walker, your grandfather didn't trust chance. He trusted paperwork. That sounded exactly like Grandpa. Whenever something mattered, he wrote it down. Birthdays, weather, horse breeding records, fence repairs, everything. He once joked, people forget. Paper doesn't. Daniel reached into his briefcase again. This time, he removed a small leather journal. It looked familiar, very familiar. My heart skipped. Where did you get that? Daniel smiled slightly. He asked us to keep it. I carefully took the journal. The leather was cracked. The corners were worn. Inside the front cover, I recognized Grandpa's handwriting immediately. If you're reading this, then the people I feared have finally shown you who they truly are. My hands trembled. The room disappeared. It felt like Grandpa was speaking directly to me. I turned the page. Son. He always called me that, never by my name. If this journal reached you, then your parents chose money over family. A tear rolled down my cheek before I realized it. Grandpa had known, years ago. He had seen this coming. I kept reading. There are truths I never shared because I hoped I was wrong. Every father wants to believe his children will become better people than he was. Mine didn't. Mom quietly began crying. Dad stared at the table. Emily looked completely lost. Grandpa's next words hit even harder. I watched your father slowly treat love like a business deal. He measured people by what they could give him. When you chose architecture instead of joining his company, he stopped seeing you as a son. I looked at Dad. He still refused to meet my eyes. Grandpa continued. You never noticed. But every birthday after you left for college, I sent you money. I frowned. Money? I'd never received any. I looked at Daniel. He already knew why. He quietly slid another document toward me. They were bank transfer records. Every year, $10,000, $20,000, $15,000. Every transfer, rejected or canceled. Recipient changed. My stomach dropped. The recipient wasn't me. It was my father. 23 separate transfers, all redirected. I couldn't breathe. I looked at Dad. What is this? He stayed silent. I asked louder, "What is this?" Finally, he answered, "I was protecting the family finances. You stole Grandpa's gifts. They would have only distracted you." I stared at him. "You stole from your own father." Mom whispered, "We needed the money." Dad turned toward her. "We agreed never to discuss this." Emily looked horrified. "You told me Grandpa stopped helping him." Dad said nothing. Because he couldn't. The documents were sitting right there. Daniel spoke again. "This is only the beginning." He opened another folder. "There are still 3 sealed documents we haven't discussed." The lawyer immediately stood. "Daniel, I strongly advise waiting." Daniel shook his head. "No." Mr. Walker's instructions were very clear. He looked at me. "Everything is to be revealed today." Just then, someone knocked on the conference room door. Everyone turned. Richard frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone else. The door slowly opened. An elderly woman stepped inside. Silver hair, navy blue suit, walking with a polished wooden cane. The moment she entered, Daniel stood up immediately. So did the lawyer. Dad's face turned completely white. He whispered only one word. "No." The woman looked directly at him. "You weren't expecting me." "Were you, Michael?" I had never seen her before. But the way everyone reacted told me one thing. She wasn't just another guest. She knew everything. And whatever she had come to say was about to change my family forever. The woman closed the conference room door behind her with surprising confidence. The soft click of the latch echoed through the room. Nobody spoke. Even Daniel Brooks stepped aside respectfully. The estate lawyer straightened his tie. "Good afternoon, Ms. Eleanor." She gave him a brief nod. Then her eyes settled on my father. "I wish we were meeting under different circumstances." Dad's face had gone completely pale. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was calm. "The same thing Henry asked me to do." She looked at me for the first time. "You must be Jacob." I nodded slowly. "You knew my grandfather?" A faint smile crossed her face. "For 48 years. He was my closest friend." That answer surprised everyone, including me. Grandpa had never mentioned an Eleanor. Not once. She walked to the head of the table. Daniel pulled out a chair. "Thank you." She sat down carefully before placing an old leather briefcase in front of her. The brass locks were scratched from years of use. She rested one hand on it. "Henry asked me to protect something." My father immediately interrupted. "This has gone far enough." "No," Eleanor replied. "It should have gone this far 23 years ago." She opened the briefcase. Inside were several sealed folders, a small key, and a faded photograph. She lifted the photograph first. "Do you recognize this?" She handed it to me. It showed Grandpa standing beside a much younger Eleanor in front of the ranch. Behind them was a newly built barn. Grandpa had one arm around her shoulder. On the back of the photo, in Grandpa's handwriting, were the words, "The only person I trust to finish what I started." I looked up. What did he mean? Eleanor took a slow breath. Henry believed that one day his family would be tested. She glanced toward my parents. He hoped he was wrong. My mother finally spoke. "If Henry distrusted us so much, why didn't he say anything?" Eleanor looked at her without anger. "He did. You just never listened." Mom lowered her eyes. Eleanor turned to me. "When you were 12, Henry started writing letters. One every month." I frowned. "Letters?" She nodded. "To you." My heart skipped. "I never got any letters." "I know." She looked toward my father. "Because someone collected them before they ever reached your mailbox." Dad's jaw tightened. Those letters were confusing him. They would have turned him against us. No, Eleanor replied quietly. The truth would have done that. She unlocked the briefcase. Inside was a thick stack of envelopes. Each one had a date. Each one had my name. Every birthday, every Christmas, every graduation, every major moment of my life. Grandpa had written to me, for years, and I'd never read a single one. My hands shook as I picked up the first envelope. The date read, May 14th, 2005. The day I graduated high school. I opened it carefully. Inside was one handwritten page. Dear Jacob, today you become a man. Don't let anyone convince you that your dreams are too expensive or too difficult. You're stronger than you know. Love, Grandpa. I couldn't hold back the tears. He had been there, even when I thought he wasn't. Emily stared at the stack of letters. There are all these? Eleanor nodded. 34. Emily slowly turned toward Dad. You kept these from him? Dad looked exhausted. I was trying to protect this family. From what? Emily asked. From honesty? Eleanor replied before he could. The room grew silent again. Then Daniel spoke. Ms. Eleanor. I believe it's time. She nodded. I agree. She reached into the briefcase one final time. This time she removed a slim black folder. Unlike the others, it carried a gold seal. Even the estate lawyer seemed nervous. What is that? I asked. Eleanor looked directly at me. The document Henry considered more important than his will. Dad stood so quickly his chair crashed to the floor. You can't show him that. Eleanor's expression hardened. I can. And I will. She broke the gold seal. Inside was a notarized document bearing Grandpa's unmistakable signature. Across the top, in bold letters, were the words, Family Legacy Agreement. I had never heard of it. Neither had Emily. But judging by my father's reaction, he had. His breathing became uneven. That agreement isn't valid. The estate lawyer finally spoke. It is. Dad turned toward him in disbelief. You knew? Richard lowered his head. I signed as one of the witnesses. You've known this entire time? I was legally bound to remain silent until the conditions were met. Eleanor slid the agreement across the table toward me. Read the first paragraph. I did. My eyes widened. It read, No member of the Walker family may permanently sell the ranch unless approved in writing by the person named as steward of the Walker legacy. I looked farther down the page. The steward's name was covered by another sealed flap. Only one signature was visible. Grandpa's. I looked at Eleanor. Who's the steward? She smiled sadly. That's the final secret Henry asked us to protect. She rested her hand on the sealed flap. Once this is opened, there will be no going back. The entire room held its breath, because everyone knew whoever was named beneath that seal controlled the future of the Walker family's fortune. No one moved. The conference room felt smaller than before. Even the ticking clock on the wall sounded louder. Eleanor rested both hands on the black folder. I've waited 23 years for this moment. My father stepped forward. Eleanor, please. She looked at him. When was the last time you called me by my name instead of that old woman? Dad said nothing. You only need people when you're afraid. She turned back to me. Jacob, whatever happens after I open this seal, remember one thing. This isn't revenge. It's responsibility. She carefully lifted the small red tab. The seal cracked. The sound echoed through the silent room. Everyone leaned forward. She unfolded the final page. I watched her eyes scan the document. Then, she smiled. A genuine smile. I knew it. Dad's voice shook. Who? Eleanor slowly rotated the paper toward me. At the bottom, under the words, Steward of the Walker Legacy, was a single name, Jacob Walker. I couldn't breathe. What? Emily gasped. Mom covered her mouth. Dad looked as if the floor had disappeared beneath him. No, that's impossible. The estate lawyer quietly adjusted his glasses. It isn't. I witnessed Mr. Henry Walker sign that document himself. I stared at the page. My own name, my own signature line. Grandpa had appointed me 23 years ago, when I was only 12. I looked at Eleanor. Why me? She smiled. Because Henry believed ownership can be inherited. But stewardship must be earned. Dad slammed both hands on the table. He was a child. He couldn't make legal decisions, Richard finally answered. He didn't. Henry did. The steward wasn't expected to make decisions until adulthood. The agreement only became active when Jacob turned 30. I blinked. I'm 37. Richard nodded. Exactly. It has been active for 7 years. A cold feeling ran through my body. 7 years? Eleanor nodded. Henry hoped your father would never force us to reveal it. Daniel Brooks placed another document beside the agreement. The ranch sale contract. He flipped directly to the signature page. Look closely. I examined it. Seller, Michael Walker. Buyer's company. Witnesses. Everything seemed normal. Until Daniel pointed to a paragraph near the bottom. I almost missed it. Sale subject to approval by the legally appointed steward of the Walker legacy. There was a blank signature line beneath it. Empty. No signature. Mine. Daniel closed the file. Without the steward's written approval, the transaction cannot legally be completed. Silence. Then Emily whispered, You mean, the ranch was never actually sold? Daniel nodded. The money was transferred into escrow. It has never been released. Dad slowly sat down. What? Daniel continued. The buyer's attorneys discovered the missing approval clause. They immediately froze the transaction. You never received the $12 million. Mom stared at Dad. You told me we already had it. He didn't answer. You lied to me? Still nothing. Eleanor folded her hands. Michael, you spent months celebrating money that never belonged to you. Just then, there was another knock at the door. Richard frowned. I don't believe this. The door opened. A young woman entered carrying a silver laptop and several thick binders. She wore a navy business suit. Daniel smiled. Perfect timing. She placed the binders on the table. I'm sorry I'm late. Traffic. She looked at me. Mr. Walker? I nodded. I'm Olivia Carter, lead attorney for Carson Agricultural Holdings. My stomach tightened. The company buying the ranch? Yes. She opened one binder. Our board asked me to attend today. Dad frowned. Why? Olivia looked directly at me. Because according to our contract, you're the only person authorized to negotiate with us. The room froze. Then she added one sentence that changed everything. And after reviewing Mr. Henry Walker's documents, our company no longer wishes to buy the ranch. Dad's face drained of color. What? Olivia calmly closed the binder. We're withdrawing our offer. Effective immediately, my father almost shouted. You can't. Olivia looked at him without emotion. We can. And we have. She slid one final document across the table. Our board unanimously agreed that the Walker Ranch is worth far more than $12 million. She paused. Especially after discovering what lies beneath the northern pasture. Every person in the room turned toward her. Even Eleanor looked surprised. I frowned. What lies beneath the northern pasture? Olivia smiled faintly. Mr. Walker, I don't think your grandfather ever told you why he refused every offer to sell that land. Olivia Carter's words settled over the room like a heavy storm. Mr. Walker, I don't think your grandfather ever told you why he refused every offer to sell that land. I looked at her. What are you talking about? She opened one of the binders. Inside were maps, old survey reports, aerial photographs, geological studies. She spread them across the conference table. The northern pasture has been surveyed 6 different times over the last 40 years. My father frowned. So? Olivia calmly pointed to a highlighted section. Every survey reached the same conclusion. I leaned closer. What conclusion? She smiled. The land itself isn't the valuable part. I frowned. Then what is? She tapped the report. The water. Everyone looked confused. Olivia continued. 30 years ago, Henry Walker hired independent hydrologists after several neighboring ranches experienced severe drought. They discovered something extraordinary. She pointed to a blue area on the map. Beneath the Walker Ranch lies one of the largest privately controlled freshwater aquifers in the region. The room went silent. It can supply drinking water and agricultural irrigation for decades. She paused. That's why major agricultural companies have tried to purchase this ranch for years. I looked around the table. So Grandpa knew? Olivia nodded. He understood that whoever controlled the water would eventually control the future of the ranch. Daniel Brooks added quietly, Henry believed land could be replaced, but clean water would only become more valuable. My father looked stunned. I never knew that. Eleanor turned toward him. Because you never listened. Henry tried to explain why the northern pasture could never be sold. You only heard the word sell. Olivia closed the report. Our board no longer wants ownership. We want a long-term partnership. She looked directly at me. If you choose. I blinked. A partnership? Yes. We would lease a small portion of the ranch under your control while preserving the land exactly as your grandfather intended. Your family would keep ownership. The ranch would remain intact. And the annual income would exceed the original sale price within a few years. I slowly looked down at Grandpa's journal. Suddenly his words made sense. Land remembers the people who respect it. It had never been about selling. It had always been about protecting. Emily quietly wiped away tears. I never understood why Grandpa spent so much time walking that pasture. Eleanor smiled sadly. He wasn't checking fences. He was protecting the future. My mother spoke for the first time in several minutes. Jacob, I'm so sorry. I looked at her. She seemed smaller somehow, less confident. I should have listened to you. I should have listened to Henry. I spent years believing money solved everything. Her voice cracked. But all we did was lose our family. I didn't answer. Not because I hated her, because I didn't know what to say. Some wounds don't heal in a single afternoon. Dad finally stood. For the first time in my life. He didn't look powerful. He looked tired, old, defeated. He slowly removed a set of keys from his pocket. Among them was Grandpa's old brass ranch key. He placed it gently in front of me. It belongs to you. I stared at the key. For years, I'd imagined revenge, winning, making him feel what I'd felt. But standing there, I realized something. Grandpa hadn't spent 23 years preparing me to destroy my family. He'd spent 23 years preparing me not to become like them. I picked up the key, then looked at my father. I'm taking responsibility for the ranch. He nodded. I know. But I'm not taking revenge. Tears filled my mother's eyes. Dad looked at me confused. What do you mean? I took a slow breath. I'm ending this. No more lies. No more favoritism. No more secrets. If this family has any future, it starts with the truth. No one argued. For the first time, there was nothing left to defend. As everyone began gathering their papers, Eleanor quietly handed me Grandpa's final journal. There are still pages you haven't read. I looked at her. I thought I'd finished it. She smiled. No. The last section is sealed. I noticed a small folded page tucked into the back cover. Across it, in Grandpa's familiar handwriting, were the words, "Open only after you decide what kind of man you want to become." I slipped the journal into my bag. Whatever Grandpa had left in those final pages, I knew one thing. It wasn't about money. It was about legacy. And for the first time in years, I felt ready to carry it. The conference room slowly emptied. The lawyers packed away their files. Daniel Brooks shook my hand before leaving. "If your grandfather were here today," he said quietly, "I think he'd be proud of the decision you made." I managed a small smile. "I hope so." Daniel nodded. He always believed the hardest battles weren't fought in court. They were fought inside families. Then he walked away. Only 4 people remained. Me, my parents, Emily. The silence between us felt heavier than every legal document that had been spread across the table. No one knew what to say. Finally, I picked up Grandpa's leather journal. The folded page was still tucked inside the back cover. Across it, in his familiar handwriting, were the words, "Open only after you decide what kind of man you want to become." I unfolded it carefully. The paper had yellowed with age. Grandpa's handwriting was as steady as ever. Grandpa's letter. "Dear Jacob, if you're reading this, then you've already faced the greatest temptation our family has ever known. Not money, not land, power. Power changes people long before wealth does. I watched your father slowly believe that owning everything meant controlling everyone. By the time he realized the difference, he had already lost the people who loved him most." I stopped reading for a moment. Across the room, my father lowered his head. I continued, "If you won today, remember this. Winning isn't taking everything from someone else. Winning is refusing to become the person who hurt you." A tear rolled down my cheek. I wiped it away quickly. Grandpa's words felt less like a letter, and more like one final conversation. The next paragraph made my heart stop. "There is one last gift, but it isn't hidden in a bank. It isn't buried beneath the ranch. It isn't locked inside a safe. It's waiting in the red barn." The red barn. I looked up immediately. Emily noticed. "What is it?" I handed her the letter. She read the final paragraph aloud. Everyone stared at one another. 30 minutes later, we stood outside the old ranch. The sun was beginning to set. Golden light covered the fields, exactly the way Grandpa loved them. Nothing had changed. The same windmill, the same fences, the same smell of fresh hay. For the first time since his funeral, the ranch felt alive again. The red barn stood exactly where it always had. Its paint had faded. The roof showed its age. Yet somehow, it still felt strong. I unlocked the old wooden door with Grandpa's brass key. The hinges groaned. Dust floated through the evening sunlight. Inside, everything looked untouched. His old saddle, his workbench, his favorite rocking chair. Even his coffee mug still rested on the shelf. For a moment, no one moved. It felt wrong to disturb anything. Emily suddenly pointed toward the corner. "Jacob." I followed her finger. Hidden behind stacked hay bales was a large wooden chest. It hadn't been there before. At least, not where I remembered. We slowly moved the hay aside. The chest was made from dark oak. Its brass lock carried Grandpa's initials. HW tied to the handle was another note, only 6 words. For the family that chooses forgiveness. I looked at my parents. Neither of them spoke. I unlocked the chest. The lid creaked open. Inside, there wasn't gold. There wasn't cash. There weren't diamonds. Instead, there were dozens of photo albums, home videos, letters, handwritten recipes from Grandma, old birthday cards, family journals, cassette tapes labeled in Grandpa's handwriting. Christmas 1998. Jacob's first horse ride. Emily's piano recital. Family picnic. There were hundreds of memories. Mom covered her mouth. I thought these were lost. Grandpa had saved them all. At the bottom of the chest rested one final envelope. It was addressed simply, "To all of you." I opened it. Inside, Grandpa had written just one page. Families don't disappear because of one mistake. They disappear because people stop choosing each other. If you're standing together while reading this, then you still have time. The ranch was never my greatest treasure. You were. If you sell the land, you'll lose a ranch. If you lose each other, you'll lose everything. No one could hold back their tears, even my father. For the first time in my life, I watched him cry. Not quietly, not politely, completely. Years of pride, gone in a single moment. He looked at me. "I'm sorry. I can't undo what I did. I stole from you. I lied. I failed as your father." His voice broke. "But if there's any chance, I'd like to earn the right to be part of this family again." I looked at him for a long time. Some apologies erase pain. Others simply begin healing. This was the second kind. I stepped forward. Then, I hugged him. Not because he'd earned forgiveness overnight, but because Grandpa had been right. Someone had to choose a different ending. Emily wrapped her arms around Mom. For the first time in decades, the Walker family stood together. Not because we were perfect, because we had finally stopped pretending. Outside, the wind carried across the northern pasture, the same pasture Grandpa had protected for half his life. I smiled. Land really did remember, and now, so would we. Epilogue. 1 year later. The Walker Ranch had never been stronger. The partnership protected the land instead of selling it. Local farmers gained reliable access to water. Scholarships were created in Grandpa Henry Walker's name for students who wanted to study agriculture, engineering, and architecture. Emily left the family company and started a nonprofit preserving historic ranches. My parents spent weekends volunteering on the property instead of trying to control it. As for me, I built something Grandpa would have loved. Not another mansion, not another office tower. A small learning center on the ranch where local children could discover the land, the history, and the value of honest work. Above the entrance, one wooden sign welcomed every visitor. Thank you for spending your time with Silent Empire Stories. If this story kept you hooked until the very end, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next unforgettable story.